Okay, good day, grade 8. So, I'm teacher Rose Ann, and I will be discussing proofs for your math lesson today. Okay, so let's start with the definition of reasoning. So, reasoning is a logical way of thinking. Sometimes you base your reasoning from different data gathered or from the given arguments. To reason out means to give conclusions or proof to establish a fact or the truth of the statement. There are two types of reasoning. So number one, we have the inductive reasoning, and the process of arriving at a conclusion based on a set of observation. And then we have the deductive reasoning, the process of arriving at a conclusion that uses facts, definition, and accepted properties in a logical order to write logical arguments. So as you can see, the difference between inductive and deductive. So inductive is based on observations, while deductive based on facts, definitions, and other accepted properties in a logical order. Next, we have the logical arguments. Logical arguments. So what is a logical argument? Logical argument includes at least one premise and a conclusion. The premise must be valid to have a valid conclusion. So, we have the premise. Ano naman yung premise? A premise is a statement that an argument will induce or justify a conclusion. It is an assumption that something is true. And then we have the conclusion. Conclusion is the judgment or decision reached by reasoning. There are two laws of deductive reasoning. Number one is the law of detachment, and then the law of syllogism. The law of detachment, we have if P implies Q is true conditional statement, then P is true and Q is true. Again, if P implies Q is true conditional statement, then P is true and Q is true. Example, para mas maintindihan natin, if CJ will not study his module in math a day before the test, then he will not get a good score. So, ang ating premise dito, CJ will not study in math a day before the test, which is symbolized by P. Then, ang ating conclusion, he will not get a good score. So again, ang premise natin, CJ did not study his module in math a day before the test. So therefore, yung conclusion natin, he will not get a good score. Another example, if n is an odd number, then the remainder is 1 when divided by 2. So, ang premise natin na accepted na true, n is an odd number, then the Q, the remainder is 1 when divided by 2. Premise, we have 17 is an odd number. So, therefore, ang conclusion natin, 17 has a remainder of 1 when divided by 2. So, 17 divided by 2 is 8. So, 8 times 2 is 16. So, we have the remainder 1. Example number 3. If the two integers are odd, then the sum is even number. So, ang P natin dito is the two integers are odd and the Q is the sum is even number. So, again, the premise is the number x and y are odd integers And then the conclusion, therefore, the sum of x and y is an even number. Next, we have the law of syllogism. So we have if P implies Q and Q implies R are true conditional statement, then P implies R is true. So para mas maintindihan, let's have an example. If Joy visits Bicol, then she will spend a day in Albay. If she will stay a day in Albay, then she will go to Cagsawa ruins. So we have two premises here. So we have the major premise, which is if Joy visits Bicol, then she will spend a day in Albay. And then we have the minor premise, which is if she will stay a day in Albay, then she will go to Cagsawa ruins. So we have the P, Joy visits Bicol, and then we have Q, another premise, she will stay in Albay, and then the conclusion is yung R natin, she will go to Cagsawa ruins. So our statement is valid. Another example, if you eat vegetable, then you become healthy. If you become healthy, then you will not get sick. So again, we have two premises here, the major premise and the minor premise. So our P here is you eat vegetable. And another premise, which is the Q, you become healthy. And the conclusion is you will not get sick. So our statement is valid. We have another example. If it is winter, then you will wear a sweater. If you wear a wool sweater, then you are a sheep. Again, if it is winter, then you will wear a wool sweater. If you wear a wool sweater, then you are a sheep. So we have the major premise. If it is winter, then you will wear a wool sweater. And then we have the minor premise. If you wear a wool sweater, then you are a sheep. So again, we have the first premise. It is winter. Then our second premise, you wear a wool sweater. And our conclusion is, you are a sheep. So ang statement natin is not valid or invalid. Okay, so we have the process of proving. There are two ways of writing a proof. The first one is the direct, and the second one is the indirect way of proving. So in the direct proof is to use to prove statements of the form if P then Q or P implies Q, which we can write in like this, P with an arrow Q. This method takes an original method which is assumed to be true and used to show directly that the other statement Q is true. So we have the following steps for direct proof. Number 1, assume that the statement P is true and use what we know about P and other facts as necessary to deduce that other statement is true, that is, show P implies Q is true. So we have an example. Number 1, if n is an odd number, then n squared is odd. So ang given natin, which is P, n is an odd integer. So prove that Q, ang conclusion natin na n squared is odd. So what you're going to do is make a table of statement and reason. So we have the statements. On the other side, we have the reason. So una nating ilalagay is n is an odd integer. So by reason of that is the given. So n plus 1, 2n plus 1, this is the definition of odd number. So kahit na anong i-input natin sa n na odd number, the answer would always be an odd number. So for example, 3. So 2 times 3 equals to 6 plus 1 is 7. Another one, 5. So we have 2 times 5 is 10 plus 1 is equal to 11. So that is the definition of odd number. So we have n squared is equal to quantity 2n plus 1 squared. So ang ating quantity 2n plus 1 is ang ating odd number, and then ini-square po natin yung odd number natin. The other side, n squared, yung n natin yung odd number, dito naman ang odd number natin 2n plus 1. So in-square yan. So ang reason yan is squaring an odd number. So we have another n squared is equal to 4n squared plus 4n plus 1. So ang reason naman nito is squaring of binomial. So in-square po natin ang 2n plus 1. So the answer is 4n squared plus 4n plus 1. And then we have n squared is equal to quantity 2n squared plus 2n plus 1. So this is factoring the GCF. And then we have n squared is equal to 2m plus 1. So definition of odd number. So ang ginawa po dito, sinubstitute po natin yung 2n squared plus 2n sa m para ma-prove po natin na ito ay definition of odd number. So as you can see, ang nagbago lang dito is yung variable. Nabago po yung n at saka yung m. So therefore, n squared is equal to 2m plus 1 is odd by definition of odd number. So we have another example. Example number 2. If a and b are even integers, then the sum of a and b is even. Again, if a and b are even integers, then the sum of a and b is even. So we have the given p, two even integers a and b, and then prove q. We have the sum a and b is even. So again, let's make the table of statement and reason. We have the statement, and on the other side, we have the reason. So we have a and b are even numbers. So ito ay given. Then a is equal to 2m and b is equal to 2p. So this is definition of even number. So no matter what even number you substitute the variable, the answer would always be equal to an even number. So we have a plus b is equal to 2m plus 2p. So dito, we just substituted a. 2m. So ito yung a, 2m, and then b natin is 2p plus b, 2p. So this is adding integers. Next we have a plus b is equal to quantity m plus p. So we factor out. So this is factoring the GCF. And then we have another one, a plus b is equal to 2x. So we will be letting x is equal to m plus p. So pinalitan po natin, sinubstitute po natin yung m plus b ng x, So this is the definition of even number. So as you can see, pinalitan lang po natin yung variable 2m and then 2x, 2p. So the sum of a plus b is even by definition of even number. So we have now the indirect proof. Ano ba yung indirect proof? Indirect proof assume that Q is false given a premise P and a conclusion Q. It is also called the proof of contradiction. Yung indirect proof ay tinatawag din po na proof of contradiction. So we have the following steps on indirect proof. Assume the opposite of the conclusion of the statement. The question is, what if the conclusion is not true? Then proceed as if this assumption is true to find the contradiction. The question is, how can you prove that the conclusion is false? And then once there is a contradiction, the original statement is true. If you're not able to prove it, then the original statement is true. Okay, so we have given, which is P, angle A and angle B are complementary angles. Prove that angle B is less than 90. So we need to prove that angle B is less than 90 degree. So again, we need to make the table of statement and reason. So the first one is the statements, and the other side, we have the reason. So angle B is greater than or equal to 90. So as you can see, kanina less than, ngayon greater than or equal to 90. So ito ay assume that the conclusion is false and that the contradiction is true. So i-assume po natin na yung conclusion natin is false, and then we will be having the contradiction, yung greater than angle B is greater than or equal to 90. This is the contradiction. So we have angle A plus angle B is equal to 90 degree. So ano ba yung pag inad natin ang two angles na magre-result ng 90 degree? So that is the definition of complementary angles. We have angle B is equal to 90 degree minus angle A. So solving for angle B by addition property of equality. So therefore, the contradiction is false. Angle B cannot be greater than 90. Thus, the original statement is true. Because as you can see, we need to subtract angle A from 90. So the contradiction is false. Angle B cannot be greater than 90. We have another example. So we have given P, which is 3R negative 5 is not equal to 13. And ang ating ipoprove, Q is, ang Q natin is R is not equal to 6. So again, we need to make, so we have to assume the contradiction. So we have now equal na ang ating given. So we have 3R minus 5 is equal to 13. Kanina not equal. And then we have R is equal to 6. Kanina is R is not equal to 6. So this is the contradiction. So we will be substituting R with 6. So 3 times 6 minus 5 is equal to 13. So that is 18 minus 5 is equals to 13. 13 is equal to 13. So therefore, the contradiction is false. R, yung contradiction natin, ito, R, ito yung contradiction natin, R must not be equal to 6. So, dapat hindi po siya equal to 6. Thus, the original statement is true. So, remember, ito na yung recap na natin. Ang premise is an assumption that something is true. Ang conclusion naman, a judgment or decision reached by reasoning. And then we have the laws of deductive reasoning, we have the law of detachment, and the which is one premise with one conclusion, and then we have the law of syllogism, two premise and a conclusion. And then we also learned about the direct proof, used to prove statements of the form if P then Q or P implies Q, which we can write in this symbol, P with an arrow Q. So this is the end of our second quarter lesson. So visit your Google Classroom for your learning task. Thank you for watching.